And welcome to this talk on how to attract more volunteers. My name's Becky Williams, and I'm the Wild Network Officer at Cheshire Wildlife Trust. And in my role, I work with all sorts of amazing community groups. Some are on the call this evening, from all across Cheshire, from friends of groups, eco churches, sustainability forums, like nature reserve volunteers, loads and loads of different loads and loads of different volunteers. And also a few years ago, I set up and chaired a youth-led nature campaign in Chester. I now run a community orchard, and I'm also a volunteer of a couple of different friends of groups. So I have seen this challenge of finding and keeping volunteers firsthand from so many different angles. And then I get asked this question again and again, how can we get more volunteers? How can we get more people interested in what we're doing? And yeah, I suppose that's what inspired me to put this talk on today, to share some ideas, some practical tips, and some fresh approaches you might not have tried yet. Because I mean, to me, any group of people coming together to help nature gives me so much hope for the future. And at the end of the day, the more people we have in these groups, the best chance we have of protecting our green spaces and helping wildlife to recover. So just a really quick run through of the agenda today. We're going to start by looking at the different reasons people might volunteer. I think understanding what motivates different people can really help us to tailor our outreach and to just connect with a much wider range of audiences. We're then going to dive into basically an enormous selection of practical outreach ideas to help spark some interest and encourage more people to get involved in all your groups. Some of these you might already have tried, but fingers crossed, hopefully everyone will leave tonight with at least one new idea to take away and try out. We're also going to look at how we communicate what we're doing, what makes an eye-catching poster, what makes a good social media post, and also just where you can promote your volunteering opportunities to reach the right type of people. So hopefully plenty to get stuck into. And at the end, it'd be fantastic if some of you would like to stick around for some discussions. It'd be really good to hear what's worked well for you, what hasn't worked well, just a chance to share ideas, basically. And the last thing I'll say is that with all the ideas I'm going to share today, it's really worth bearing in mind that at the end of the day, you're the experts in your community, and what works well for some areas might not work well for others. So, there isn't much trust in society at the minute, but people really do still have deep trust in their communities, which means that, when you engage with your local area, you're much more likely to be listened to, and you can hopefully have a chance to make a really big difference, which is great. So why are we here? Many of you are already well aware that nature's in decline, both globally and in the UK. The latest State of Nature report pulls together loads of different data from across the UK to show just how urgent the situation is. So I'm sure you're familiar with these, but just a few of the headlines, 1 in 6 species are at risk of going extinct in Great Britain. We're one of the most nature depleted countries on the earth. 99% of Cheshire's wildflower meadows have been completely lost. So there are so many things we can do to help. And green spaces, like the ones that your group care for, are just so essential. They form really important wildlife corridors, connecting wild spaces, helping species to move about really freely and safely. So I suppose in theory, the more volunteers we have in these groups, the more work we can do to bring wildlife back and raise awareness about its decline. And you may want volunteers to help with the workload of managing your sites. You may want more volunteers because you're passionate about engaging people in nature at a time when it needs you the most. So yeah, plenty of reasons for why we need more volunteers. And I think we often forget that we have different reasons for getting involved in wildlife action, and it really varies. But I think if we can consider this when asking for help or telling our story, we can hopefully come at it from a much more understanding place, because I suppose not everyone gets involved for the same reasons you did. So we can't assume that what convinced you to volunteer will work for everyone else. So I'd love you to, if you don't mind, of all the reasons you volunteer, if you don't mind popping it in the chat, what would you say is the main reason if you had to pick just one. I'm sure there are plenty of reasons why you volunteer, but if you could put just one main reason in the chat. And while you're all doing that, um, I asked a few people in the Wild Network recently the same question, and this is just what a few of them said. So, uh, I like being with like-minded people. I want to make a difference to declining hedgehog numbers. Being proactive in doing what I can to reduce the effects of climate change and biodiversity loss. Someone said it's got a positive effect on their well-being, not just from the social aspect, but also being out in nature. And I love this one as well. Even small actions make me feel less helpless and more constructive. So as you can see, there's just so many different reasons. Let's see what you've said in the chat. Alison said to contribute to the local area, amazing. Wanting to do something truly valuable with my spare time, I love it. To enable young people to make a difference to their local environment. We've got a few mental well-being, to make a difference. I want to protect the environment. Yeah, these are all fantastic. Um, yeah, I think for me, like one of the many reasons I volunteer is just because I really love working on projects with other people who care, people who care about and support our local green spaces. It gives me a lot of hope. Um, because like many of us, we all experience sort of eco anxiety. So just knowing so many people are doing it is fantastic. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think I've got everyone on there. Yeah, making a difference. It's great. And if you want to get really into it, I'm not going to go too much on this, but there is a bit of research on this. So the NCVO Time Well Spent report explored the different reasons people choose to volunteer. Now, this is much broader research for sort of all areas of volunteering, but I think a lot of it applies to conservation volunteering as well. And basically, it found that, most people are motivated by a desire to make a difference, to support a cause they care about, or just give something back to the community. A lot of what those on the call tonight have said as well, really similar things. And I suppose step one is sort of tapping into what's important to them. If you can tap into what's important to them, it will help. You can help sort of show how getting involved in your volunteering can meet their needs as well as your groups. And it could be their family, it could be a desire like to learn new skills, or even just anxiety about the future. Because I think most people do care about nature. They're not always sure how, or how to help, or why it matters. For example, like a dog walker or a parent bringing their child to a park might not seem very interested in nature, but when a developer threatens that green space, suddenly the connection clicks. So don't assume that they don't care about nature. Just find out about how they care about nature. And when you're talking to members of the public, I think it's really important to ask open-ended questions just to find out what's important to them. Sometimes it's just about finding that right moment to spark the interest, and you've just got to be ready with a way for them to get involved when it does. So, like for example, if someone's new to the area, you could say, "Oh, our group are so friendly. Honestly, you'll have to meet Dave. Oh, yeah, and it's such a nice chance to meet the locals. It's really welcoming. That's what you might say if they mention that they're new to the area. Um, if they're maybe a green career seeker, oh, well, we learn all sorts at our volunteering days. You'll have to be so and so. He's an expert in X, Y, Z. Try to have a way in that meets their needs as well as yours. And it's really worth considering that different age groups often look for different things in volunteering. So, for example, young people tend to want to make a bigger difference on sort of big issues like climate change, biodiversity loss. They might be seeking skills or experience for jobs or education. So anything they can get on their CV, or build their confidence. They also might be able to help you with sort of their skills in social media to really amplify your work. Then I suppose we've got working age adults. So this category, I suppose, might want some stress relief. They might want some connection to nature, might be motivated by family, for example, getting the kids outdoors, sort of being a role model, really. They also, if they're new to the area, like I said, they might want to meet some more local people. And you also might get some career changes in this one as well, which I see quite a lot of, which is great. And then you've got sort of older adults and retirees generally have a little bit more time. They might want to spend it meaningfully. They might be motivated by giving back or preserving nature for future generations, maybe their grandchildren. They value routine, connection, maybe staying physically active. There are plenty of other audiences. We could do so many of these. Other ones include like families. They might want safe, fun, and educational outdoor activities. We could have one for people from underrepresented communities. So, and they might be seeking community and safe access to green spaces. If you've got any asylum seekers in your area, they might want to practice their English skills. So, could you try to accommodate them, try to make them feel valued? And then you've also got health focus audiences, which might be motivated by mental or physical health. Um, and they might want stress relief. You've also got faith groups. I'm sure many of you might have heard of the Eco Church Awards. So they're sort of working towards wildlife stewardship and community values, things like that. And then we've also got businesses, but I'm going to come on to that a little bit later. If you want to get really into it, if you're like quite a well-established group, this is called the Community Organising Framework. Well worth having a look on their website. They've got this really useful guide, and it just reminds us of the journey required to achieve change for good. I'm not going to delve too much into that. We're going to sort of focus on the first three. But if you haven't heard of them, it's worth just having a look at because they're a fantastic website, and it's basically showing how you can run community groups really effectively. It's also really important to remember that there are plenty of barriers to getting involved in volunteering. I'm sure many of you are well aware of some of these, but for each barrier, try to think about how you could overcome them and be ready with a reason. So, for example, lack of time, a real common one. Most people say, sorry, I just don't have the time. I'm too busy. I can't balance everything. But, how could we accommodate this? Could you make it really clear from the start that all the volunteering is extremely flexible, no regular commitment? And if you're posting on social media, you could give people a rough estimate for sort of how long a volunteer morning might be. You could also, in those first few chats, you could ask, when are you free? What time would suit you? How can we accommodate and work around your schedule? Other ones on here, unclear or limited opportunities. So I think a lot of people just don't know how or where they can volunteer. So I suppose instead of expecting them to come to you, could we go to where they are, where the people are, and think about how you're presenting yourself. Are you online? Are you on email? Do you have posters up locally? We'll come on to this bit later. There's also lack of knowledge or experience. So could you run some events that focus on learning? So, for example, come and learn sessions. Make it really clear what experience level you need. So I'm sure a lot of you might already do this, but just a little thing on a poster saying no prior experience needed. Everyone is so welcome. Bring your friend, whatever. There's plenty of ways we can get over that one. Financial constraints, I mean, young people especially will feel this one, but I'm sure a lot of others will as well. Not everyone can afford to volunteer their time for free. So I suppose any freebies of any kind are a really great way to get people down. Like free cake, free homemade cake, and I'm there. Honestly, I am there. If there's cake, I'm coming. If there's wildflower seeds or craft activities, anything free just goes down really well. But it depends depending on what your group can accommodate. We've also got physical and mobility sort of limitations. So could you offer different types of volunteering? So for those who aren't as mobile, maybe they're they're sort of experts in wildflowers or something. Could they act as a consultant and they could advise your group? Or could they do a bit of research for you or a bit of social media or email admin, things like that? Other ones on here, so let's see, we've got feeling disconnected sort of from nature, really common one. Perceived lack of impact. We'll come on to this later, but storytelling is everything when it comes to engaging people. So just make sure you're taking lots of pictures of everything you do, give examples of success stories, show the impact. Before and after photos are good for this. I don't know if you know the group, the Wirral Wombles, that are the sort of litter picking group on the Wirral. They have lots of sort of before and after photos. They have lots of pictures just of all the bags of litter that people have collected. And it leads to such wonderful comments about people saying, "Oh my God, thank you so much. This is my favourite park, and I always think it looks such a mess." So I suppose just like show the impact, show that getting together as a group can work. You've also got social or cultural barriers. So again, maybe you could contact asylum groups or food banks and ask, how can we accommodate you in our group? And I mean, eco-anxiety, already mentioned this, but so many of us feel overwhelmed by the scale of environmental issues. So to avoid triggering, panic attacks, try to lead with positives and introduce the tough facts gradually. For example, like I mentioned, Cheshire's lost 99% of its wildflower meadows, but you can help restore them, starting in your local park. And here's how, always give them solutions. And we've also got social barriers on there as well. I think I've covered all of them. So now probably this is what you've actually come for. So I'm basically going to go through tons of ideas of ways to engage people. It's going to be a bit of a pick and mix, so pick bits that you think will suit you. We're going to focus on sort of different in-person activities that you could run to raise awareness about what you're doing and how we communicate this. It's also worth saying that generally speaking, people take around 3 positive interactions before they start to fully engage with something. So it might not click on the first one. So my favorite way to connect with new volunteers just has to be any kind of in-person engagement. I just think it's so memorable, and there's a really good opportunity to have some of those important initial chats, that community listening where you're establishing what's important to them and how we can accommodate them in your group. So, I mean, there's so many ways to do this. You could have stands at third-party events like fairs or markets. You could run your own events at your green space or a nearby venue if you think you'll get better traffic. And I thought we'd just go into a few more of these now. So, guided walks and talks. I don't know what it is, but these always go down really well. They're really popular. It's a great opportunity to educate locals at the same time of talking about what kind of volunteering you do. I'd be interested to know if anyone's done any guided walks. Maybe pop it in the chat if you have. But some examples if you haven't. So bat walks, really, really popular. We've got a few bat detectors at Cheshire Wildlife Trust, which we loan out to sort of trusted community groups if that will help you to carry out a bat walk. You could do a dawn chorus walk or a dusk chorus walk, any kind of identification guided walk, so wildflower ID, insect ID, fungi, tree ID, nature reserve. I saw a guided bluebell walk earlier in the spring, which I really wanted to go to, but I couldn't, unfortunately. Butterfly recording, wildlife recording, sustainability walks where we have some of these in Chester where you sort of walk around businesses and groups that are doing really great things. So it's like sort of like a guided walk showing you all of those. But I mean, my favorite has to be the silent disco litter pick, which is just the best idea I think anyone's ever come up with. But I would say try maybe steer clear of roads, maybe keep those to the parks, because we wouldn't want anyone wandering out into the road and not hearing something. So yeah, and then also talk. So maybe you've got someone in the group who's really knowledgeable about specific species. Could you give a talk locally about the green space you volunteer at, or I don't know, like an interesting species you've seen on your site? And if you get stuck up for any ideas or topics, have a little look on the Wildlife Trust website on their event pages. There'll be so much inspiration there that you could pull inspiration from and tweak to your site and your group. So you could also describe your volunteering more as opportunities to learn. So could you present your events as a chance to build skills, whether it's hedge laying or meadow management, Any kind of workshops or talks or walks should all have that sort of that learning element. I think people are really interested in it. Oh, sun's just come through. Hang on. Oh, that's nice. So yeah, and then I suppose with all these workshops, if you do run it as a workshop, you could just sort of gently ask, we always love a few extra hands to help manage this going forward. Would you like to come again? And during these sessions, just please share your knowledge freely and make newcomers feel really welcome. Just be really generous with your knowledge, because again, people might be there to learn. So you've got to encourage that, I think. I mentioned storytelling earlier. So if you're doing any kind of planting, I really recommend just getting creative with a story. So, for example, I'm sure some of you might have heard of Trees for Congleton, which are a community group who have planted a tree for every person in Congleton over the last 6 years. So that's 30,000 trees in 6 years, which is amazing. I mean, I can see Paul on the chat as well. Goose trees is another fantastic tree planting thing. I think what's really nice about Trees for Congleton is that it's very easy to remember. And I'm not suggesting everyone goes out and plants, a tree for everyone in Warrington. That might be slightly bigger, but it's a really nice message. So could you plant a daffodil for everyone in your local village? Or could you sow a 1 meter patch of wildflowers for everyone on the street? Just try to think about your messaging. What is it? Is it easy to remember? Do you think people will go away and tell their family and friends about it? These pictures here are from the Friends of the Countess of Chester Country Park, who planted an oak tree to commemorate 80 years since the end of World War II. And it was just a really memorable day. Everyone went home with a story. They all came to see this tree we planted, and it was really lovely. You could also do poems for each tree. So if you're planting an orchard or something, could you have a little poem at the base of each tree that maybe locals could write for you, or maybe primary schools, things like that. Just something that is a bit more interesting. And when people slow down and think, oh, what's going on here? I didn't realize this was a community initiative. Um, so at Cheshire Wildlife Trust, we had one of our sort of donation appeals a few years ago, which was amazing because it meant we could buy a new nature reserve, but people could purchase a sort of 3 by 3 meter patch of the new nature reserve. And slowly, bit by bit, we could afford the whole thing. And it's fantastic. And people still come up to me and tell me about it, saying, oh, I own a little bit of that. And it just, people feel ownership of it. So I'm not suggesting you go and buy a nature reserve, although please do if you can. But could you do, memorial planting where people either pay for or plant a tree in memory of someone they've lost? So just always think about how you can add a story to what you're doing. It really makes people more likely to go home and tell others about what they've seen that day. Because it's just so much more appealing to be part of that kind of narrative. And also, like I was saying before, if you're looking for inspiration, try to keep an eye on all the sort of calendar theme days. Like you've got Earth Day, uh, Hedgehog Week, No Mo May, things like that. Try and jump off the back of those momentum and be like, oh, this group are doing so and so for Earth Day. Try and jump off the back of that if you're stuck for ideas. You also might want to run an event at sort of fairs or other events, to engage maybe more with families. So if you do, try and have lots of activities that will entertain the children, and then you can speak to the adults. But either or, it's really good engagement, and people will come over if you've got something crafty on the go. A few examples if you're looking for some ideas. Seed bombs, always really fun. Gets a bit messy, but it's good fun. You could do some rubbings. That's fairly easy. This one on the right is again from the Friends of the Countess of the Chester Country Park. God, that's a mouthful. And this is actually part of a self-led walk around their woodland there. So children can go around with a sheet of paper and sort of make a rubbing along the way of all these different insects. It's really, really lovely idea. Also, other ideas, you could make paper plant pots, you could make pinecone bees, you could decorate jam jars, jar lids, things like that. You might want to do something around craftivism, which is basically sort of handmade arts, like often embroidery or knitting, things like that. It's like a thoughtful form of activism to inspire change. I saw again, Rural Wombles came to one of our events earlier this year, and they had a guess how many plastic lids are in the jar. And I thought that was a really nice touch because it was all about lids and picking. So that was really nice. Again, more, you don't have to do fancy rubbings. You could do leaf rubbings. You could make leaf insects, sketching wildflower shadows. They don't have to be very expensive. If you've just got a few pens and some paper, you could make clay animals, do some colouring or origami. At Cheshire Wildlife Trust, we do a lot of sort of matching games, like match the leaf to the tree photo or match the animal print to the animal. I'm giving you all my trade secrets now. We do like guess what's in the bag, so you could put different things like snail shells and things like that in the bag. You could do cyanotype printing. We also do Where's Wally Wildlife, which is where we sort of print out images of wildlife camouflaged in the natural settings, and you sort of say, oh, can you spot where the wildlife is, and then people have to try and find it. So I think it's just about finding something that's easy for them to come over to without feeling like they're going to get trapped into a big conversation. Just some little things like that are just really nice. They're positive engagements. And again, if you're stuck for ideas, have a look on Wildlife Watch. These are really nice sheets to share on your Facebook pages as well. They've got loads of pre-made activities, things like this. So nature hunts, like tick off a flower, tick off a leaf or insects that they see. If you don't have a printer, could you do like a QR code or something similar? So yeah, loads of different creative, crafty ideas. I'm always really happy to workshop ideas with you if you've got a particular message that you want to come across and you want like an activity or a game that reflects that. I'm always more than happy. Mm. So corporate days. Some community groups we work with have found sort of new volunteers through partnering with businesses. A lot of businesses these days offer like corporate volunteer days, or you might have heard of ones working towards sort of corporate social responsibility awards or social value schemes. They're all called different things these days, but basically, a lot of businesses are sort of seeking meaningful team building opportunities for staff, days out of the office, hands-on experiences that align with environmental goals. And not only does this bring in extra help for these sort of specific projects, but it also raises awareness about what you're doing and can often lead to ongoing support. You might also get younger people doing this because you sort of overcome that barrier of mid-week volunteer days where some people can't always make it because of work. So yeah, I wondered if you've ever considered sort of encouraging businesses or even community groups actually to come and use your space for, like I said, away days or any kind of activities like that. For community groups, um, there's no reason why you can't invite other groups to come and use your space to do something. So you might have heard of the City Nature Challenge, which is it's all about, oh God, this light again. Right, there we go. I'm in the dark now. Um, um, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So City Nature Challenge, it's basically like a global wildlife recording challenge. And it's super engaging. And a lot of the time people are looking for places to do them. So maybe could they come and do it on a site you manage or a site you've transformed? Um, if you've got access to an indoor space, maybe community gardens or a rugby club or village hall, sometimes businesses look for areas to host away days. I know we do at Cheshire Wildlife Trust. So anything like that, there are plenty of ways to get people in and raise awareness about what you're doing without actually volunteering half the time. School visits are another fantastic way to spark early interest in wildlife. Um, you know, Even small activities can inspire enthusiasm that carries over into the family. And at the end of the day, when the kids are excited, the parents often follow. So if you can introduce young people into volunteering early, it just helps normalize it as just a part of life. And you never know, you could be shaping future conservationists, future volunteers, advocates, things like that. You could also offer help to local primary schools with if they want to do tree planting projects or wildlife projects, things like that. To make your life easier, you might want to get a volunteer DBS check. It just makes your life so much easier when you're trying to get into schools. You also might want to offer work experience for like Duke of Edinburgh students, or um, if someone's looking to change career, they might look for some experience to put on their CV. So there's plenty of ways to get younger people involved. So now that I've just gone on at you for loads and loads of ideas, how do we communicate this to the sort of maximum amount of people? So, for example, a few of these: social media, writing newsletters, you can have a notice board, word of mouth, or even just community groups. I think try not to see other community groups as competition for volunteers. I know plenty of people in multiple groups, and some groups who actually request help from other groups during big planting projects. So try to reach out to other groups and ask if they know anyone that'd be interested, and try and work more collaboratively. Don't see it as competition. Also, community centres are normally quite a good place to start if you're not sure what's going on in your area. So think about what platforms you might want to share your volunteer days on. I mean, you probably know Facebook's kind of the go-to for community groups. You can create events, you can share photos, links, text, etc. It's kind of the whole package, and it's very useful. Um, if you've got a private Facebook group, you might want to adapt your sign-up form to include a question, something along the lines of, what are you interested in? Just use that as like a way to find out what people are interested in, so you can do more of that. I think LinkedIn is such an underrated platform. It's a really good way to find businesses, like I was saying about the corporate volunteer days. There's also so many young green career seekers who use it to, find experience and network. We've also got Instagram on here. So Instagram allows you to do targeted ads. I think it's around maybe a tenner, and it will share your post to everyone in the local area. So if you had a bit of extra funding through a funding bid, you could do some targeted Instagram posts. And of course, there's TikTok, which you're probably thinking, oh my God, I'm not doing TikTok, but it's the fastest growing platform. It's not just young people who use it. So could be an option. I can't say I post on it myself, but I know some that do. So yeah, lots of options there. I also wanted to just shine a light on some Facebook features, just some little tips that might help, really promote what these volunteer days that you've got on. So one way I find really useful is, and I've got a screenshot here, but if you in the search bar on the top left, you can search an area. So for example, I've put Chester in here. You can then go on to groups. So it'll give you loads of different groups in that area, which might not have anything to do with nature or wildlife or anything like that. It might be dog walking or free stuff or things like that. But the members are likely to be local. And we find that people don't always like to travel very far for volunteering. So just make your life easy. Copy and paste a post into loads of different groups in your area. Or you could tailor it, to the interest of each group. If it's you sometimes get groups on Facebook which promote free stuff. So, just emphasize that your event is free, that we've got free coffee and cake, all the rest of it. Other things you can do is you can actually, and don't make a habit of this, but uh, you can tag, either you can say everyone, or you can tag the whole group in a post, and that way everyone gets a little notification saying you've been tagged. So they're more likely to click on it thinking, what have I been tagged in? And also just a really friendly reminder that people use their phone really quickly now if they're using Facebook on their phone. So just include a really engaging photo, preferably of people, really. People love people. And if it's a volunteer day, show what people can expect to be doing, preferably a happy one with everyone smiling. I've noticed time and time again that, photos of people get the most likes, they get the most engagement. And maybe alongside your post, just try to make sure the first sentence is really clear and snappy. Make sure it's important, and maybe you could pop it in bold, maybe break the paragraphs up a bit to make it easier to read. just think about your wording. Is it too chatty, too formal? Do you want to sound like a friendly local or neighbour that needs some help? Just I think with AI coming in, just we can sort of spot it a mile off. So be authentic, be conversational. And you might want to include some other benefits. So if it's a volunteer session, this is a really nice chance to meet new people and learn new skills, give people a good idea of what to expect, paint them a real picture. A few other functions, I won't spend too long on these, but if you're using Facebook on a computer, while you're on your groups page, you can scroll down the left and see your engagement statistics. So you can see what posts have the most engagement and share more things like that. And you can get really into it. There's like popular days, it'll show you when the most popular days and times are, which is really cool as well. I don't know if any of you create any events on posters on Canva. For those of you who don't know, it's like an easy Photoshop. It's really great. I'd suggest just making a general template and then tweaking the dates and times for future sessions. My top tips for making a good posters: make sure the title, date, and location are really easy to read. Think about your color palette. What does it convey? What kind of audience? You can probably see on here, the one on the right is hopefully clearly a bit more the one on the left is a bit more serious. So use easy to read fonts. You could use photos, again, show what they could expect to be doing on the volunteer days, make it eye-catchy. How do they book? Where do they meet? What's the parking or transport like? What should they wear? Just make it really simple, not too wordy, and eye-catching would be my top tips. Another fantastic way to sort of tell people when your volunteer days are coming up is to have some sort of like local, like a community notice board, that's what you call it. You could even put one up in your park with like a laminated sheet that you can update with a pen every month, just saying the next volunteer days is X, Y, and Z. That's what Hoppe would have done on the left here, which works really well. So if anyone's walking through the wood, they say, oh, I know when the next one is. So if you don't have social media, I suppose this is another version. Another way to reach more potential volunteers is through contacting other groups, other organisations that manage mailing lists, and just ask them, could you share a little piece about what we're doing and why we need help? A few that spring to mind. I know that Record have a mailing list. Chester Zoo have a really good one. The Wirral Environmental Network. Honestly, there's so many mailing lists. It's just about finding them and tapping into them and just feeling confident enough to say, actually, do you mind just sharing a little something to your community? That would be really helpful. And also, you might want to set up your own mailing list. I know a lot of community groups that will send out a monthly mailing list just saying these are the upcoming days that we're going to be at the site. And word of mouth. I mean, how can I not say word of mouth? Possibly the most effective way for someone to hear about your volunteering is through someone they respect, someone whose opinion they care about. Because I suppose if a friend or family member recommends it, you're so much more likely to go. So think about, I suppose, your online wording. Could you, bring a friend Sundays, bring your family to the barbecue or something like this, just something that makes it really clear that, everyone's welcome. Please bring your friends, please bring your family. So you can also, I'm not sure if any of you know of any of these, but you can also post your volunteer days on local organisations and universities. So LinkedIn, again, you can post volunteer days on there. Cheshire East Community and Voluntary Services, Cheshire West Voluntary Action, loads of volunteering and support for groups on there. They're just really good to get in touch with if you haven't already and you're in the West. Chester Uni have a volunteer hub. So if you want to sort of suggest that students might be able to come and find out a bit more about what you're doing, there's a whole system on there. It's just really hard not knowing where all these things come from. You've also got, Reese Heath College. They have lots of conservation courses with students who might want extra experience. And then there's loads of UK volunteer sites like Do It Life, Reach Volunteering, Be Inspired. There's loads. I can send you these if you're interested, but they're a bit more UK wide. And have I not talked about this already? So at Cheshire Wildlife Trust, we can support your community groups through something called the Wild Network. It's essentially a community of people who are all taking action for nature and encouraging others to do the same in their local areas. And we run a Facebook group, which you are very welcome to post on. You can post your events, you can post your volunteering opportunities on there. We are a lot of the time when I'm sort of admitting people to the group because it's a private group, we constantly get people saying, I'd like to know what volunteering is going on locally. So I'd hope there's a good audience on there. People looking for things to get involved in. So just post, please post, use it how you like. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a bit of a mix of ideas that you could take away to raise awareness of your group, so that I suppose A, they know you exist, and B, you offer volunteering. But I just want to touch really briefly. I mean, we could do a whole different webinar on this, but I wanted to touch briefly on how you can retain those volunteers going forward. And the top one, make them feel valued, celebrate their work. Could you do, volunteer spotlight or volunteer of the month, shout outs on social media, sending Christmas cards, giving freebies, making a cake, anything like this just makes them feel valued. Other options, this might not work for every group, but you could create different job roles. We find that it sometimes allows volunteers to feel a bit more ownership. Oh yeah, brilliant. Olivia's just popped that in the chat. That's great. If you're not on the monthly newsletter already, please do sign up there. Thank you. What else was I going to say? Community listening. I know I keep saying it, but just keep asking, keep getting people's opinions, keep letting that affect the work. Try to keep it flexible. You could, if you can, offer to pay expenses if you can get this into one of your funding base. I know that's not easy for everyone. And I asked Dan, who runs our wildflower nursery at Bickley Hall Farm. I said, "You get loads of volunteers. What's your secret? Go on, tell me your secrets." And he said, regularity. So build a rhythm. I am here every Thursday, every other Thursday, and just be really grateful for whatever time they can give you. And if they're interested to learn more, then just give them the time, share your knowledge. He also said, invest in nice coffee. He said he thinks that's the only reason people keep coming back. They just love the nice coffee. And yeah, I suppose just again, he said, involve people as much as you can from the start if possible. I know that's not always possible, but just involve people, make them feel like valued, make their ideas feel important. And he also said, use the nicest person in the group to be the face of recruiting new volunteers. So finally, I just wanted to share an anecdote from a community group who just seems to be attracting loads of volunteers. So Mark O'Sullivan is the chair of Friends of Hobhay Wood in Frodsham, an amazing woodland. If you haven't been, I highly recommend going. And I said, what's your secret? What are you doing that's working? And he said the following, I'll just read it. The work is of interest to people. In our case, tree planting and fruit tree pruning are really popular. And it seems that if the work is nice, the people will stay. He also said publicity. We've made a real effort in promoting the wood, sharing about how valuable, rich, and rare the habitat is and how it needs to be protected. Also, teaching people just how much there is to see there has been really useful, which their Facebook page has been key for. He said almost daily sharing of delights seen in the wood has been really well received, often resulting in comments like, I must go down there soon. He also said that their Facebook group is public, and events that have been popular include black box monitoring, wildflower walks, stream surveys, fungal forays. He said they've all added to the pool of people who, after realising how wonderful the place is, want to help. Oh, and he's also given 20 talks to local groups, which is amazing. And they have people doing their D volunteering section with them. And I mentioned before the volunteer notice board. And also, God, he's just done so much. He's also got companies involved, which doing sort of company volunteer mornings, which has led to new volunteers. So I think in summary, what's worked for us is literally shouting out about the place on a frequent basis, letting people see the wood, thus encouraging them to volunteer. These are just some of his photographs that he puts on the Facebook page. I'd recommend going on there. It is wonderful. There is so many amazing wildlife that you see there. And he said this overall, make sure you're coming from a place of understanding. Be nice. Don't complain to young people about young people. Amen to that. I'm glad he said it and I didn't have to, because it's really true. If you want young people, don't complain to them about why young people don't get involved in volunteering. It can be a bit off-putting. So, to sum up, make sure you're listening to, what locals are interested in, and tap into that when you're encouraging them to join. Try to see yourself as a bit of a sort of coordinator who, you can organize lots of nice jobs for volunteers to get them through the door. And once they're in, ask for their input, ask for their ideas. Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is just infectious. Like, let your enthusiasm out for and why you care about it. Why is it worth protecting? I mentioned storytelling, try and create a story, keep it flexible, just reinforce the fact that it's super flexible to begin with, so people don't feel like they're making a big commitment. And I know I don't need to say this to anyone on the call, but I've included it because it's obviously a really big important part, but just be nice. Probably seems obvious, but people don't want to join if you're not approachable. And I suppose finally, just thank you so much for taking the time to help wildlife at just a time when it really needs you, because your actions make such a big difference. So from Cheshire Wildlife Trust and Wildlife Everywhere, just thank you for all your hard work. And if there's any way we can support you, please do get in touch. You've got my email. Please do get in touch. So thank you so much for listening.